Veshkar had been buying slaves for 60 years. He had purchased beings from 40 different species. He had been one of the most successful slave traders in the Grecic hegemony for 3 decades. He owned 12 estates across the empire. He owned a personal fleet of 17 ships. He owned more wealth than most planetary governors. And on this particular evening, he was about to make the worst purchase of his very long life. He just did not know it yet. The auction house was the largest in the outer rim. It sat on a small moon orbiting a gas giant. The moon was surrounded by defensive platforms and patrolled by mercenary fleets. The auction house itself was a massive structure of black stone and silver metal, designed to impress wealthy buyers and intimidate the merchandise. Inside, the lighting was dim. The temperature was carefully controlled. The air smelled of expensive incense, designed to mask the underlying smell of fear and despair. Veshkar walked through the main hall with the confidence of a man who had been here 1,000 times before. He was a Grecic, like most of the other buyers. The Grecic were a tall species with 4 eyes, 2 on the front of their face and 2 on the sides. Their skin was a pale lavender color. They had 6 fingers on each hand. They were elegant by their own standards, refined, cultured. Veshkar himself was over 200 years old. He had silver streaks running through his usually dark hair. He wore expensive robes, embroidered with the symbols of his family lineage. He nodded to other buyers as he passed them. They nodded back. The slave trading community in this part of the galaxy was relatively small. Everyone knew everyone. The serious buyers had been doing business with each other for decades. They competed at auctions, but they were also social peers. They attended the same galas. Their children married each other. They were, in their own way, a family. A family built on the buying and selling of sapient beings, but a family nonetheless. Veshkar took his usual seat in the front row of the auction hall. A young Grecic attendant brought him a glass of expensive wine. Another attendant handed him a data pad listing the offerings for tonight's auction. He scanned the list with practiced eyes. Most of the items were the usual stock. Pleasure slaves from the Velthi species, known for their grace and beauty. Labor slaves from the Corian species, valued for their physical strength. Domestic servants from the Farron species, prized for their intelligence and obedience. Then he saw the item that stopped him. Lot number 18, 1 human female, age approximately 30 years, health rating excellent, background unknown, acquired through neutral channels from a third-party broker. Suggested starting bid, 15,000 imperial credits. Veshkar stared at the entry. He had been buying slaves for 60 years. He had never seen a human at auction before. He had heard of humans, of course, everyone had. They were a species that had emerged from the outer rim about a century ago. They were considered dangerous. They were officially under the protection of the Galactic Council. The Council had declared, decades ago, that humans were not to be enslaved. Any species caught trafficking humans would face severe consequences. The penalty was supposed to be extreme. But here was a human, listed for sale at the most prestigious auction house in the outer rim. Someone had brought her here. Someone was selling her. Veshkar knew immediately that this would be a controversial purchase. He also knew immediately that he wanted her. The reasons were complex. He liked rare items. He liked collecting things that other people did not have. The pleasure of owning the only human slave in his social circle would be enormous. Other slave traders would visit his estates just to see her. They would offer to purchase her at inflated prices. She would become a status symbol. She would make him even more powerful and respected in the community than he already was. There was also a more practical reason. The Galactic Council's prohibition on human slavery was officially enforced. But Veshkar had been doing business in the outer rim for decades. He knew how things worked. The Council's authority did not really extend to the outer rim. The mercenary fleets that patrolled the trade routes were not loyal to the Council. They were loyal to whoever paid them. As long as Veshkar kept the human discreet, kept her at one of his more remote estates, did not display her too publicly, there would be no consequences. The Council would never even know. He made his decision quickly. He would buy her, whatever the price. The auction began. The first 17 lots went quickly. Veshkar bid on a few of them and won 3. He was not particularly excited about any of the early items. He was waiting. Finally, Lot 18 was announced. The auctioneer was a Grecic woman with a dramatic voice. She knew how to build excitement. Lot 18, she announced. A rare offering tonight, 1 human female acquired through neutral channels, age approximately 30 standard years, in excellent health. Documentation is incomplete, but the third-party broker has provided extensive verification of her physical and psychological condition. Please, let us see her. A door opened on the side of the auction stage. Two armed handlers walked out, escorting a small figure between them. They walked to the center of the stage. The handlers stepped back, the lights focused on the figure. She was small, not as small as some other species, but small compared to the Greshik, perhaps 5.5 human feet in height. She had dark hair that fell to her shoulders. She had brown skin. She had brown eyes. She was wearing a simple gray garment that covered her from shoulders to knees. She had restraints on her wrists. Her ankles were free. She did not look around the auction hall. She did not look at the bidders. She did not look afraid. She simply stood there in the center of the stage with her eyes lowered. Veshkar studied her with the practiced eye of a slave buyer. She did not appear injured. She did not appear malnourished. She did not appear to have been mistreated. The third-party broker had taken good care of her. That was important. Damaged merchandise was harder to use. The auctioneer continued her presentation. She speaks 3 languages, including Standard Greshik. She has been pacified for transport, but has shown no signs of resistance during the past 2 weeks. Her temperament has been assessed as docile. She is suitable for any application the buyer might desire. We will begin bidding at 15,000 credits. The bidding started slowly. Most of the buyers in the room were hesitant. They had heard the same news Veshkar had heard. The Galactic Council prohibited human slavery. Trafficking humans was a serious crime. None of them wanted to be the buyer who attracted council attention. But Veshkar did not hesitate. He raised his hand. 20,000 credits. The auctioneer nodded to him. 20,000 from the distinguished trader Veshkar. A few other buyers, encouraged by his bid, joined in. The price climbed slowly. 25,000, 30,000, 35,000. Most of the buyers dropped out as the price increased. They were testing the waters. They were not serious. They knew the risks of buying a human. At 50,000 credits, only Veshkar and one other buyer were still bidding. The other buyer was a wealthy Korean named Murtak. The two of them traded bids back and forth. 60,000, 65,000, 70,000. The price kept climbing. Veshkar was determined. He had decided to buy this human. The price did not matter. He had the resources. He bid 80,000 credits, then 90,000, then 100,000. Murtak finally dropped out. He shook his head and waved his hand dismissively as if to say that this was getting absurd. 100,000 credits going once, the auctioneer announced. Going twice, sold to the distinguished trader Veshkar for 100,000 credits. There was a small round of polite applause. Veshkar stood up and bowed slightly to acknowledge it. He had paid 5 times the starting bid. He had spent more on this human than he had ever spent on any single slave in his career. He did not care. He had won. The auction continued. Veshkar did not bid on any more items. He was waiting to collect his new property. After the auction ended, he went to the auction house's processing area. The human was waiting for him there, still flanked by the 2 armed handlers. The auction house's chief administrator handed him a data pad with the ownership transfer documents. Sign here, please, distinguished trader. Veshkar signed. The transfer was complete. The human was officially his property. He looked at her for the first time at close range. She was still looking at the ground. She had not raised her eyes since he had purchased her. Most slaves, after being purchased, looked at their new owners with fear or anger or resignation. This human showed no expression at all. Her face was completely neutral. "What is your name?" he asked her in standard Greshik. She raised her eyes. They were dark brown. They were calm. They were not the eyes of a slave. "My name is Captain Maya Reyes." Veshkar paused. He had been expecting a simple name, perhaps a first name. Slaves did not have titles. He looked at her more carefully. "Your name is Maya." "My name is Captain Maya Reyes." "Captain is not a name." "It is part of my name, slave trader. I am Captain Maya Reyes of the Earth Defense Force. I am a prisoner of war, captured illegally by pirates 2 months ago. I am not a slave. I am not for sale. The transaction you just completed is invalid under interstellar law." Veshkar stared at her. She had spoken in perfect standard Greshik. Her voice had been calm and clear. She had not raised her voice. She had not made any threats. She had simply stated facts. The facts were not what he had expected to hear. "Captain Reyes, the transaction has been completed. You are now my property under the laws of the Greshik hegemony. The laws of Earth do not apply here. The Galactic Council does not enforce its prohibitions in this region. You are mine." I am aware of what you believe, slave traitor. I am simply correcting you. I am not your property. I will never be your property. Whatever you do to me in the coming days or weeks, I am still a captain of the Earth Defense Force. I am still a human being. I am still a prisoner of war whose government will be looking for me. Veshkar felt a flash of irritation. He had not expected defiance from this human. He had expected the docile temperament that had been promised by the third-party broker. He looked at the two handlers. Did you not say she had been pacified? She has been pacified for transport, distinguished trader. She has shown no physical resistance. But we cannot pacify her mind. She talks like this with everyone. It is her way. Veshkar looked back at Captain Reyes. Captain, whatever you believe, you are now my property. I have paid 100,000 credits for you. That price has been finalized. You will return with me to my estate. You will serve me as I command. If you cooperate, I will treat you well. If you resist, I will treat you accordingly. The choice is yours. There is no choice. I am a prisoner. I will behave as a prisoner does. I will not cooperate. I will not actively serve you. I will eat what you provide. I will rest when you allow. I will not attack you. I will not attempt to escape because escape is not currently possible. I will simply wait. Wait for what? She looked at him directly. Her brown eyes were perfectly steady. For my people to come and get me. Veshkar laughed. It was a soft laugh. The laugh of a wealthy man amused by the delusions of his merchandise. Captain Reyes, your people will not come and get you. They do not know where you are. The auction has been conducted discreetly. The trail has been thoroughly obscured. I will take you to one of my more remote estates. You will live there for the rest of your natural life. No one will find you. Your government will eventually conclude that you died during your capture and they will move on. You will spend the next 40 or 50 years as my property. There is no rescue coming. You are wrong about that, slave trader. My people will come. It is what they do. Your faith is touching, but it is misplaced. We will see. Veshkar shook his head. He was beginning to think that perhaps this purchase had been a mistake. The human's defiance was unsettling, but he had paid for her. He could not return her now. He would simply have to break her in over time. He had broken in countless slaves before. This one would be no different. He gestured to the handlers. Prepare her for transport. We leave for my estate in 2 hours. The handlers escorted Captain Reyes out of the processing area. Veshkar finished the paperwork. He arranged for the credit transfer. 2 hours later, he boarded his personal ship, the Veshkar Glory, with his new human property and the 3 other slaves he had purchased that evening. The ship departed the auction house moon and began the journey to his most remote estate, located on a private moon 5 systems away. The journey would take 3 days at standard speed. Veshkar did not know it yet, but he had exactly 3 days left to live. Maya Reyes sat in her small cabin aboard the Veshkar Glory. The cabin was simple: a bed, a small table, a wash basin, a toilet behind a partition. It was clean and adequate for a captive. The door was locked from the outside. There was a small window that looked out at the stars. Maya sat on the bed and watched the stars. She was not afraid. She had been a captain in the Earth Defense Force for 12 years. She had served on 3 different ships. She had seen combat. She had seen death. She had seen the worst that the universe could do to people. She had also seen the best. She had been trained for every possible scenario, including the scenario of being captured by hostile species. She knew exactly what to do. The first rule of being a prisoner was to stay calm. Panic was the enemy. Panic led to mistakes. Panic gave the captors what they wanted, which was control over the prisoner's mind. Maya had been trained for years to suppress panic, to think clearly under extreme stress, to maintain her dignity and sense of self regardless of what happened to her body. The second rule was to observe. Always observe. Note every detail. Note the layout of the ship. Note the schedule of the guards. Note the personality of the captor. Note everything. Information was the most valuable thing a prisoner could possess. Information made escape possible eventually if escape became necessary. Information also made survival possible. The third rule was to remember that her government would come for her. The Earth Defense Force did not abandon its officers. It had a long history of conducting rescue operations for captured personnel, no matter how distant or difficult. The Earth Defense Force had developed technologies and tactics specifically for tracking lost officers across the galaxy. Maya knew that there was a tracker implanted in her body, deep in her bone marrow, undetectable by normal scans. The tracker had been transmitting her location every 12 hours since the moment she had been captured. By now, Earth Command knew exactly where she was. They were already preparing the rescue operation. The only question was how long it would take. The slave auction had been held in the outer rim, far from any human territory. It would take Earth's forces time to position themselves. But they would come. They always came. The fourth rule was to provide intelligence to her rescuers, even while she was a prisoner. Maya knew that the tracker in her body also functioned as a passive recording device. It captured audio of everything within range of her body. It captured environmental data, including the positions of other beings, the layout of structures, the technological capabilities of her captors. All of this information was being transmitted back to Earth Command in compressed bursts every 12 hours. By the time her rescuers arrived, they would have detailed intelligence about everything Maya had seen and heard during her captivity. They would know the layout of the slave trader's estate. They would know the security arrangements. They would know the names of everyone who worked there. They would know the routes in and out. They would have everything they needed to conduct a precise surgical operation. Maya's job, as a prisoner, was simply to survive long enough for the rescue to arrive, and to make sure that her captors did not realize what was happening until it was too late. She had been doing this job for 2 months now. She had been captured by pirates while her patrol craft was investigating an unusual energy signature in deep space. The pirates had killed 2 of her crew and taken her alive. They had handed her off to a slave broker. The slave broker had handed her off to the auction house. The auction house had sold her to Veshkar. Through all of this, the tracker had been transmitting steadily. Earth Command had been tracking her every movement. She knew with absolute certainty that the rescue was coming. She only needed to wait. The door to her cabin opened. Veshkar entered. He sat down on the small chair across from her bed. "Captain Reyes, I thought we should have a conversation." "All right. I want to understand you. I want to know who you are. I have purchased many slaves over the years. I have made a study of how to manage them effectively. Each species is different. Each individual is different. I want to learn what kind of human you are." "What do you want to know?" "Tell me about your life, your family, your career, your beliefs, anything you wish to share." Maya thought about this. She decided to give him some information, not the truth exactly, but not lies. A version of the truth that would not compromise her mission, that would not reveal anything important, but that would give Veshkar what he wanted, which was the illusion of connection with his property. "I have a daughter," Maya said. "She is 8 years old. Her name is Sophie. She lives on Earth with my mother. My husband died 3 years ago. He was killed in an accident. Since then, I have raised Sophie with the help of my mother. I am a captain in the Earth Defense Force. I have served for 12 years. I joined when I was 18. Before that, I lived in a small city called Albuquerque. I had a normal childhood. I have an older brother and a younger sister." Veshkar listened carefully. He was good at listening. He had learned over the years that slaves were more cooperative when they felt their owners cared about them. He nodded encouragingly. "Your daughter, Sophie, tell me about her." "She is very smart. She wants to be a scientist when she grows up. She likes books. She has a small dog named Pepper. She has been waiting for me to come home since I was deployed 8 months ago. She does not know that I have been captured. My mother has been telling her that I am on an extended mission." "That must be hard, to be separated from your daughter." "Yes, it is hard. What if I told you that I could give you a comfortable life on my estate? You would have your own room, you would eat well, you would be safe, you would not have to fight in any more wars, you could live out your life in peace. You would never see your daughter again, but you would be safe. Would you consider this a fair exchange?" Maya looked at him. She did not say anything for a long moment. "Veshkar, may I be honest with you?" "Please." "You bought me to be a status symbol. You bought me because I am rare. You bought me because owning me will make other slave traders jealous and impressed. You did not buy me out of any concern for my well-being. You bought me because I am valuable property, so I will not pretend that any of this is fair. I will not pretend that you are doing me a favor. You are not. You are a slave trader. I'm a captured prisoner. Let us at least be honest with each other about what this is." Veshkar studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled slightly. "Captain Reyes, you are correct. I will not pretend otherwise. I bought you because you are rare and valuable. I bought you because owning you increases my status. I bought you because I wanted to. That is the truth. I appreciate your willingness to speak honestly. I will try to be honest with you in return." "Thank you. In return for your honesty, I will offer you something. I will tell you what your life with me will look like. I will be straightforward." "Please." You will live at one of my remote estates. The estate is located on a private moon. The moon has comfortable atmosphere. The estate has gardens, libraries, recreation facilities. It is not a prison. It is a beautiful place. You will have your own quarters. You will not be required to perform any physical labor. You will, however, be expected to be available for me when I visit the estate. I visit the estate approximately once per month. During my visits, you will dine with me. You will converse with me. You will entertain my guests when I have parties. You will be presented to my associates as my prized possession. They will admire you. They will envy me. This is your role. And the rest of the time, you will be free to read, exercise, walk in the gardens, do whatever you wish within the estate. You will be monitored, of course. You cannot leave. But within those limits, your life will be comfortable. It will be, by many measures, a better life than most beings in the galaxy enjoy. Except that I will be your slave. Yes, except that. But Captain Reyes, that is the reality of your situation. You cannot return to your daughter. You cannot return to your career. You cannot return to your home. You will live out your life as my property. The question is only whether you will live well or live miserably. If you cooperate, you will live well. If you resist, you will live miserably. The choice is yours. I understand my situation, Veshkar. And I am still going to wait for my people to come and get me. Veshkar shook his head. He stood up. He walked to the door. He paused there. Captain Reyes, I am going to tell you something, not because I want to be cruel, because I think you need to hear it. Your people are not coming. They do not know where you are. They never will. The auction was conducted with extreme discretion. The transfer was processed through multiple intermediaries. I have purchased many beings over the years, and not one of them has ever been rescued. Not one. The probability that you will be rescued is essentially zero. Please accept this reality. It will make your life easier. Veshkar, I am going to tell you something, not because I want to be cruel, because I think you need to hear it. You have made a mistake by purchasing me. The mistake will cost you everything you own, including your life. I am sorry, but it will. There is nothing you can do now to change what is coming. The transaction has been completed. The consequences are inevitable. Please accept this reality. It will not make your last days easier, but at least you will not be surprised when they arrive. Veshkar stared at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his 4 eyes, something like uncertainty. He had been a slave trader for 60 years. He had bought and sold thousands of beings. He had heard every kind of bluff and threat from his merchandise. He had heard slaves promise revenge. He had heard slaves promise that their gods would punish him. He had heard slaves promise everything. Maya Reyes did not sound like a slave making threats. She sounded like a captain stating facts. The uncertainty passed. Veshkar pushed it down. He had no reason to be uncertain. He was the wealthy and powerful slave trader. She was the small human female he had purchased. He was in control of this situation. He had been in control of every situation for 60 years. He left the cabin. He closed the door. He locked it behind him. Maya watched the door close. She lay back on the bed. She closed her eyes. She waited. The journey to Veshkar's estate took the remaining time as planned. The Veshkar glory arrived at the private moon late on the 3rd day. The estate was indeed beautiful. It was a sprawling complex of buildings made of pale stone and dark wood. There were gardens, there were courtyards, there were fountains. The atmosphere on the moon was breathable for both Greshik and humans. The temperature was mild. Maya was escorted to her quarters by 2 handlers. The quarters consisted of 3 rooms, a bedroom, a sitting room, a small private bathroom. The rooms were tastefully furnished. There were books on the shelves. There was art on the walls. There was a window that looked out onto a garden. It was, as Veshkar had promised, comfortable. Maya thanked the handlers. They left and locked the door behind them. She walked around the room slowly. She examined everything. She memorized every detail. She found the surveillance devices, all 4 of them. She did not disable them. She wanted Veshkar to think she was settling in. She sat down on the bed. She waited. 3 hours later, the Earth Defense Forces arrived. They came in a way that no one had anticipated. They did not arrive with a fleet. They did not arrive with warships. They did not bombard the estate or threaten the staff. They arrived with a single small craft. The craft was approximately the size of a personal shuttle. It dropped out of faster than light travel 200 meters above the estate's main building. It descended on silent thrusters. It landed in the central courtyard. The estate's security system detected the craft immediately. Alarms began to sound throughout the complex. Veshkar, who had been having dinner in his private dining room, looked up in alarm. He activated his communication device. Security, report what is happening. Distinguished trader, an unknown craft has landed in the central courtyard. We are mobilizing response teams. Whose craft is it? Unknown. The configuration does not match any known design. The vessel is small. There may be only a few crew members. We are preparing to engage. Veshkar's 4 eyes widened. He had a security force of approximately 40 armed guards stationed at the estate at all times. 40 guards against a small shuttle should have been an easy victory, but something about the situation felt wrong. Do not engage yet. Identify the crew, determine their intentions. Yes, distinguished trader. A few minutes passed. Veshkar waited. The communication device crackled again. Distinguished trader, 3 figures have emerged from the craft. They are humans. They are wearing combat armor. They are heavily armed. They are not making any hostile movements. They are simply standing in the courtyard. They appear to be waiting. For what? For you, distinguished trader. They have requested an audience with you. They claim to be representatives of Earth Defense Forces. They state that they are here to recover Captain Maya Reyes. Veshkar's blood turned cold. He stood up. He walked to the window of his dining room. He looked out at the courtyard. There were indeed 3 humans standing in the center of the courtyard. They were wearing armor that he did not recognize. The armor was dark, almost black. It absorbed light. It made the humans look like shadows in the late evening twilight. They were carrying weapons. The weapons were similarly dark and unfamiliar. There were 3 of them, only 3. Veshkar had 40 armed guards. His guards should have been able to overwhelm 3 humans easily. But Veshkar had been a slave trader for 60 years. He had developed certain instincts. He knew when something was about to go very wrong. His instincts were screaming at him now. He activated his communication device again. Open communication with the humans. I will speak with them directly. Yes, distinguished trader. A moment later, his communication device showed an image of one of the humans. The human was a woman. She had dark hair tied back. She had a hard face. She wore the dark armor without a helmet. Her eyes were brown. They were perfectly calm. Slave trader Veshkar, I am Major Kim of Earth Defense Special Operations. We are here to retrieve Captain Maya Reyes. She was illegally captured by pirates 2 months ago and sold through your auction system. We are here to bring her home. Please bring her to the courtyard immediately. Once she is in our custody, we will depart without further incident. Veshkar tried to keep his voice steady. Major Kim, with respect, I purchased Captain Reyes through legitimate channels under the laws of the Greshik hegemony. The transaction was legal. I am not required to release her to you. Slave trader Veshkar, with respect, your hegemony's laws do not apply to human citizens. Captain Reyes is a human citizen and a serving officer in the Earth Defense Force. She was illegally captured. Her status as a prisoner of war is protected by interstellar law. The transaction you participated in was illegal regardless of what your local laws say. We are here to enforce the relevant law. Please bring her to the courtyard. Major Kim, I have 40 armed guards on this estate. You have 3 personnel. If you attempt to take her by force, you will die. Major Kim looked at him through the communication device. Her expression did not change. She did not laugh. She did not threaten. She simply spoke quietly. Slave trader Veshkar, I would like to give you one opportunity to reconsider your position. Please understand what is happening here. We are here because we received intelligence reports confirming Captain Reyes' location 3 days ago. Those reports came directly from her. She has been transmitting since the moment she was captured. We know exactly where she is. We know exactly how many guards you have. We know their positions. We know their weapons. We know everything about your estate. The intelligence we have is overwhelming. And there are not just 3 of us here. There are 3 of us in the courtyard. There are 40 more around the estate, currently invisible due to active camouflage technology. There are 200 more in orbit, with weapons targeted at your estate and at every facility you own throughout the hegemony. There are 3,000 more in a fleet that arrived in this system 6 hours ago and is currently holding position behind your moon, waiting for my signal. Veshkar stared at the screen. He felt the blood drain from his face. You are bluffing. I'm not bluffing. Slave trader Veshkar, I am going to explain something to you very clearly. Earth Defense Force takes the capture of our officers very seriously. We have spent the last 2 months tracking Captain Reyes. We have spent the last 2 months identifying everyone involved in her capture and subsequent sale. We have a complete list of names. We have a complete list of locations. We have planned operations against every one of those locations. Those operations are coordinated to begin simultaneously with mine. In exactly 4 minutes, when I give the signal, my forces will engage your estate. Other Earth Defense Forces will engage the auction house, the third-party broker, the pirate vessel that captured her, and every other location involved in this transaction. We will retrieve Captain Reyes. We will destroy the criminal network that participated in her capture. We will end this. Veshkar's mouth went dry. Major Kim, please, we can negotiate. I will release Captain Reyes immediately. I will provide reparations. We can avoid this. Slave trader Veshkar. The negotiation phase ended when you completed your purchase 3 days ago. The enforcement phase begins now. You have 1 minute to bring Captain Reyes to the courtyard. If she is brought to the courtyard, you will be allowed to surrender peacefully. If she is not brought to the courtyard, my forces will retrieve her by force. You will not survive the second option. Decide. The communication went silent. Veshkar stood in his dining room. His 4 eyes were wide. He looked at the courtyard through his window. He looked at the 3 humans standing there. He thought about everything he had built over the past 60 years. The estates, the fleet, the wealth, the status. It was all about to end. He activated his communication device. Bring Captain Reyes to the courtyard, quickly. Do not harm her. 2 minutes later, Maya Reyes walked out of the estate's main building into the courtyard. Her hands were no longer in restraints. She was wearing the simple gray garment she had been wearing during the auction. She walked across the courtyard to where Major Kim and the other 2 operators were standing. The 3 humans saluted her crisply. She returned the salute. Captain Reyes, welcome back. Major Kim, thank you for coming. It is my honor, Captain. The transport is ready when you are. Maya turned and looked at Veshkar's window. She knew he was watching. She nodded slightly to him. It was not a friendly nod. It was not a hostile nod. It was simply an acknowledgement. Then she walked to the small shuttle. She boarded it with the 3 operators. The shuttle lifted off and disappeared into the sky. Veshkar stood at his window. He watched the shuttle leave. He breathed slowly. He waited. He waited to find out what would happen next. What happened next was the most coordinated military operation in galactic history. In the next 12 hours, Earth Defense Forces executed simultaneous strikes against every location associated with Captain Reyes' capture and sale. The pirate vessel that had captured her was destroyed in deep space. The third-party broker's facility was raided, and the broker himself was arrested. The auction house was seized, and all the slaves currently being held there were freed and returned to their home worlds. Veshkar's other estates throughout the hegemony were raided. His fleet was either destroyed or captured. The Greshik hegemony itself was put under heavy diplomatic pressure. The Galactic Council, which had been deliberately weak in enforcing its prohibitions on human slavery, was now forced to act. The hegemony was given an ultimatum: outlaw slavery completely or face economic and military isolation from the rest of the galaxy. The hegemony, under pressure from both Earth and the Council, agreed within 48 hours. Slavery was officially banned throughout the Greshik hegemony. All slaves throughout the Empire were freed. The transformation of an entire civilization happened in 3 days. Veshkar himself surrendered peacefully when the additional Earth forces revealed themselves around his estate. He was arrested. He was tried in a joint Galactic Council and Earth tribunal. He was convicted of multiple counts of trafficking in sapient beings. His estates were confiscated. His wealth was redistributed to the families of the slaves he had owned over the course of his career. He was sentenced to 50 years of imprisonment on a council-administered facility. He served his sentence quietly. He was an old man already at the time of his conviction, 200 years old. He lived for 30 more years in his prison. He had time to think about what he had done, time to reflect on his 60-year career as a slave trader, time to consider how many lives he had destroyed in the pursuit of wealth and status. 3 months into his prison sentence, Captain Maya Reyes came to visit him. The visit was unexpected. Veshkar was sitting in his small cell reading when a guard informed him that he had a visitor. He was surprised. He had not had visitors. His former social circle had abandoned him after his conviction. His family had distanced themselves from him to avoid being associated with his crimes. He had assumed that no one would ever visit him again. He was escorted to a small visitor's room. Maya Reyes was waiting for him. She was wearing her Earth Defense Force uniform. The uniform had a captain's insignia, and Veshkar noticed that she now had 2 additional decorations that she had not had during her captivity. Captain Reyes. Hello, Veshkar. I did not expect to see you again. I did not expect to be here, but I wanted to talk to you. May I sit? Please. She sat down across from him. They looked at each other for a long moment. Two beings from different species who had once been owner and property. Now they were free citizens, meeting as equals across a small table in a prison. Why have you come? Veshkar asked. Because I wanted to tell you something. Something I have been thinking about for the past 3 months. I wanted to tell you in person. What is it? I want to thank you. Veshkar blinked all 4 of his eyes in confusion. Thank me for what? For showing the galaxy how serious the human position on slavery actually is. For 60 years, you ran a slave trading operation in the Outer Rim. You did this knowing that humans were officially protected by the Galactic Council. You did this knowing that human slavery was prohibited. You did this knowing that Earth might respond if you crossed the line. And you crossed the line anyway. You bought me. You paid 100,000 credits for me. You signed the transfer documents. You took me to your estate. Yes. In doing so, Veshkar, you gave Earth Defense Forces exactly the case we needed. The case we had been waiting for. For decades, the Greshik hegemony had been engaged in slave trading. We had been watching. We had been documenting. But we had never had a clear-cut case where a human citizen was directly involved. We could not justify a military intervention without that case. We needed someone in the hegemony to actually purchase a human and complete the transaction. We needed someone to give us the legal and moral grounds to act. You used me. I used you, yes. The Earth Defense Force planned the entire operation. We allowed me to be captured. We allowed me to be sold. We allowed the transaction to be completed. The pirate ship that captured me had been monitored by our intelligence service for months. The third-party broker was a known associate of yours. The auction house was carefully selected. The entire sequence was orchestrated. I volunteered for the mission, Veshkar. I knew what was going to happen. I knew that if everything went according to plan, I would be sold to you specifically. We had been tracking your habits for years. We knew you would be the most likely buyer for a rare human female. Veshkar sat in silence for a long time. He processed what she was telling him. He had been the target all along. He had been the test case. He had been the example that would justify the dismantling of the hegemony's slave trade. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you deserve to know. You have spent the last 3 months in this cell. You have been thinking about your life. You have been thinking about what you did. I want you to understand that what you experienced was not just bad luck. It was not just that you happened to make the wrong purchase at the wrong time. It was a deliberate operation by my government. We chose you. We engineered the entire situation. We used your own greed and arrogance against you to bring down the hegemony's slave trade. This is. It is also true, Veshkar, that you could have walked away. You could have not bid on me. You could have noticed that I was a human and decided not to risk it. You could have followed the council's prohibition. You did not. You bid 100,000 credits to purchase me because you wanted me as a status symbol. So while we engineered the situation, you made the choice. You walked into the trap. You did so because of who you are. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand who you are. I think the rest of your life will be easier if you understand. You are not a victim of circumstance, Veshkar. You are a man who made choices, bad choices, choices that hurt many beings over 60 years. The fact that we used you to bring down the slave trade does not mean you were innocent. It means we found a way to use a guilty man's behavior to do something good. There is a difference. Veshkar was silent for a long time. Captain Reyes, I am sorry. For what specifically? For everything, for buying you, for the 60 years of slave trading before you, for all the beings whose lives I destroyed, for all the families I broke apart, for all the suffering I caused. I did not understand. I did not let myself understand. I was wealthy and powerful, and I told myself that what I did was just business. It was not just business. It was the destruction of lives. I see that now. I am very sorry. I believe you, Veshkar. Will you forgive me? Maya thought about this for a long moment. That is not really up to me. I cannot forgive you on behalf of all the beings you hurt. I am only one of them. But Veshkar, for what you did to me personally in the 3 days I was your property, you did not hurt me. You treated me as you treated all your slaves, which was as property. That was bad, but you did not torture me. You did not abuse me. You spoke to me politely. You released me when my people came for me. For what you did to me personally, I do not have anything to forgive. So in that small sense, you have already been forgiven. Thank you. You are welcome. They sat in silence for a few more minutes. Then Maya stood up. I should go. I have a long journey back to Earth. Captain Reyes. Yes. Your daughter, Sophie, how is she? Maya smiled. It was the first time Veshkar had seen her smile. She is wonderful. She is 9 years old now. She is very smart. She wants to be a scientist. She still has her dog, Pepper. She is glad to have her mother home. I am glad to hear it. Goodbye, Veshkar. Goodbye, Captain Reyes. She left. Veshkar returned to his cell. He spent the rest of his sentence thinking about what she had told him. He read. He wrote a journal. He tried to understand what he had been. He tried to imagine what he might have been instead if he had made different choices. He died at the age of 230, having served 30 years of his 50-year sentence. He died peacefully. He had made peace with what he had done. He had accepted his punishment. He had not asked for early release. He had not appealed his conviction. He had simply served his time and tried to use it to become a better being, even though he would never have the chance to demonstrate that improvement to the outside world. His journal was found after his death. It was published, with his permission, granted in his will. The journal became required reading in the Greshik hegemony school system. It served as a cautionary tale about the destruction that wealth and arrogance could cause, and the long, slow process of redemption that was possible if one was honest about one's mistakes. The Greshik hegemony itself transformed in the decades following Veshkar's arrest. The dismantling of the slave trade had been the beginning. After that, the hegemony had been forced to confront many other aspects of its society that were tied to slavery. Their economy had to be restructured. Their social systems had to be reformed. Their values had to be reconsidered. It was not easy. It took generations. But the hegemony eventually became a society that no longer practiced slavery in any form. They became a respected member of the galactic community. They became trading partners with Earth, allies in some matters, friends to many of the species they had once oppressed. The transformation had begun with a single purchase. One alien slave trader who had bought one human at auction. The trade that had been intended to make Veshkar even richer had instead destroyed everything he had built. But in destroying his small empire of cruelty, it had set in motion the larger destruction of an entire system of cruelty. The single sale had been the catalyst for the dismantling of an industry that had operated for centuries. Maya Reyes returned to Earth. She was promoted to Major. She continued to serve in the Earth Defense Force for another decade. She raised her daughter Sophie, who grew up to become exactly the scientist she had wanted to be. She lived to see her grandchildren born. She died at the age of 87, peacefully in her home in Albuquerque. At her funeral, the eulogy mentioned her career, her family, her service to her country. It did not mention the operation that had taken down the Greshik hegemony's slave trade. That operation remained classified for many years. By the time it was declassified, Maya was already an old woman. She did not seek any recognition. She had done her duty. The rest was for history to record or not, as it chose. The Earth Defense Force eventually built a memorial to all the officers who had volunteered for similar deep-cover operations. The memorial was located in a quiet garden near the Earth Defense headquarters. There were many names on the memorial. Some of those names belonged to officers who had not come home. Others belonged to officers who had, like Maya, completed their missions and returned to live ordinary lives. The memorial honored them all equally. On the marker dedicated to Maya Reyes, there was a small inscription. It read simply, Captain Maya Reyes volunteered for the impossible, came home, made the galaxy better. That was all, that was enough. Many years later, a Greshik student visited the memorial. The student was a young woman studying interstellar history at a university on Earth. She had been assigned to research the Greshik hegemony's transformation from a slave trading society to a peaceful trading partner. Her research had led her to Maya Reyes' name. She had traveled to Earth to see the memorial in person. She stood in front of Maya's marker for a long time. She thought about the connection between the small human officer who was named on this marker and the transformation of her own civilization. She thought about how many small choices had led to this moment. Maya's choice to volunteer, Veshkar's choice to bid, the Council's choice to act, the hegemony's choice to reform. The student placed a small flower in front of the marker. She bowed slightly. Then she walked away. She returned to her studies. She wrote her thesis. She graduated. She went on to a career in galactic diplomacy. She spent her life building bridges between species. She did this work in part because she had been inspired by what she had learned about Captain Maya Reyes. Inspiration is a strange thing. It moves through history in ways that no one can predict. A small human officer who allowed herself to be captured and sold into slavery in order to entrap a single slave trader, in order to provide the legal grounds to dismantle an entire criminal industry, ended up inspiring a young Grecic woman to dedicate her life to peace between species. The chain of cause and effect ran across generations and across species and across thousands of light years of space. This was what Maya Reyes had done. This was what her sacrifice had purchased. Not just the freedom of the slaves who had been freed, not just the destruction of the slave trade, not just the punishment of Veshkar, but also the future. The future where a Grecic student could study galactic history and feel inspired by a human she had never met. The future where slavery was no longer practiced anywhere in the known galaxy. The future where the children of the species that had once enslaved humans grew up to become friends of those same humans. The future, in other words, was the thing Maya had purchased, with 3 days of being a slave, with 100,000 credits worth of pretended captivity, with the careful intelligence work of months of preparation, with the willingness to risk everything for the chance to do something important. 3 days had ended an empire of cruelty. 3 days had begun a future of peace. That was the story, that was the truth, that was the legacy. And in a small garden near the Earth Defense Headquarters, the marker for Captain Maya Reyes continued to stand quietly, year after year, generation after generation, reminding anyone who visited that small acts of courage could change the course of civilizations. That was what humans did, in the quiet way they did things. They made the galaxy better. One captain at a time. One mission at a time. Forever. Always. Until the end of time.